The courtroom was silent. Hundreds of alien eyes watched the woman in chains. Her skin was blue like deep ocean light, and her eyes glowed faintly under the hall's pale lamps. She was called the Widow. No one used her real name anymore. Her husband, a respected war captain, had died fighting against humans. And now, she stood accused of treason, accused of questioning her empire's endless war. The High Judge, a tall alien with silver armor and cold eyes, spoke in a voice that echoed across the chamber. Commander Valira, you are guilty of speaking against our holy war. You are guilty of compassion for the human enemy. The punishment for your betrayal will be life with them. Gasps filled the room. Even she looked shocked. To live with them? She whispered. That is worse than death. The guards did not answer. They chained her wrists and pulled her forward. The doors opened, revealing a docking bay filled with bright light and human soldiers waiting. Among them stood one man, tall, quiet, with a scar across his cheek. His name was Captain Ryan Cole of the Terran Defense Force. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just watched as the aliens handed her over like property. This human, the judge said loudly, will keep you. You will serve your sentence under him. You will obey. You will remember your shame. When the ship doors closed behind them, silence filled the space again. The widow looked around the small transport ship. Cold metal walls, humming engines, and the human who now held her freedom. Ryan finally spoke, his voice calm but tired. I didn't ask for this, he said. But I don't hurt people who haven't hurt me. She turned away, her voice bitter. You think kindness makes you noble? To my people, you are monsters. Ryan looked down as if her words were not new to him. Maybe, he said quietly. But monsters don't feed their prisoners. Sit. You look weak. He handed her a small food pack. She stared at it for a long time, then turned her face away. I will not eat human food. Then starve, he replied softly. It's your choice. The rest of the flight was quiet. Only the soft hum of the engines filled the air. When they arrived at the small human outpost on the desert planet of Arden 7, the heat hit her skin like fire. The base was small, just a few tents, vehicles, and a communication tower. She expected guards, walls, and weapons, but instead, there were only 3 humans working silently, repairing machinery and setting solar panels. Ryan led her to a small metal room. This will be yours, he said simply. It's not much, but it's clean. She looked around. A bed, a chair, a small window facing the red desert. She waited for the insult, the command, the cruelty one, but it never came. You may rest, he said. No one here will touch you. And then he left. For days, she stayed silent. She watched him from the window, repairing drones, feeding a small cat that followed him everywhere. She didn't understand him. Humans were supposed to be brutal, loud, full of greed and anger, but this one spoke softly to a creature that couldn't even answer him. One evening she asked, Why do you talk to that animal? Ryan looked up, smiling faintly. Because it listens without judging. That night, she dreamed of her husband, his last words before his death. Never trust a human. But when she woke up, she heard Ryan outside humming an old song as he cooked breakfast. The sound felt strange, peaceful, almost humanizing. She stepped out and watched him quietly. The cat rubbed against her leg, and for the first time she didn't push it away. Ryan looked at her and said, Coffee? She frowned. Is that another trick? He chuckled. No tricks. Just coffee. You'll hate it. Everyone does the first time. She hesitated, then took the cup. The bitter taste burned her tongue, but somehow, it didn't feel like punishment anymore. As the sun rose over the red dunes, something shifted inside her. She wasn't ready to admit it, not yet, but this human didn't fit the stories her people told. He didn't chain her. He didn't mock her. He treated her as if she were equal. From her window that night, she watched the stars and whispered to herself, What kind of monster shows mercy? Ryan didn't hear her, but as he sat outside staring into the fire, he murmured, What kind of punishment feels like peace? Neither of them knew it yet, but the galaxy's cruel sentence had just become the, beginning of something far greater than either could imagine. Days turned into weeks on the quiet desert base of Arden 7. The red sun rose and fell over endless dunes, and the only sound was the hum of machines and the soft wind blowing through the sand. The alien woman once called the widow now lived in the small metal room Ryan had given her. She spoke little, but her silence was no longer filled with hatred, only confusion. Ryan treated her like an equal. He never raised his voice. He never used her name as an insult. Every morning he shared food with her and left half his water bottle beside her bed. When she asked why, he only said, "Because you're not my prisoner." Still, she couldn't understand him. Her people had taught her that humans were destroyers, greedy, violent, born to conquer. Yet this human spent his days fixing broken machines and caring for a tiny cat that slept on his shoulder. One afternoon, she followed him outside. He was repairing a solar drone, sweat shining on his skin under the sun. She crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "Why do you work alone? Where are your soldiers?" Ryan looked up. "Dead," he said simply. "Most of them. The rest were sent home after the peace treaty talks failed." "And you stayed here? On this empty planet?" He nodded. "Someone had to keep the power running. The colonies still depend on this outpost," she frowned. "You humans always say noble things, but you kill for them too." Ryan gave a small, tired smile. "You think I don't know that? I've killed more than I'll ever forgive myself for." His words silenced her. For the first time, she saw not an enemy, but a man haunted by his own past. That night, the storm came. Wind howled against the walls, sand covered the base, and lightning cracked across the sky. Power failed, plunging everything into darkness. The widow woke to the sound of the alarms. Ryan was already at the door, pulling on his jacket. "Stay inside," he shouted. But she followed him anyway. Outside, the storm was fierce, tearing through solar towers and cables. Ryan ran toward a damaged antenna, trying to keep it from collapsing. When he slipped on the wet sand, she rushed forward without thinking. Her chains, symbols of her punishment, clanged as she grabbed his arm and pulled him up. For a moment, their eyes met through the red dust. The storm roared around them, but the world felt still. Back inside, both soaked and gasping for air, she glared at him. "You would have died out there." Ryan laughed softly, shaking his head. "You came after me. You told me to stay. And you never listen." For the first time, she almost smiled. Almost. Later, while drying their clothes near the heating vent, she noticed scars across his shoulder. Deep, jagged lines like fire had burned him once. "Who did this to you?" she asked quietly. "War," he said. "Everyone loses something in it. You lost your husband. I lost my home." She didn't reply. Instead, she sat beside him in silence. In the following days, something between them began to change. She started helping with repairs, learning human tools, and fixing the water filters. When she struggled, Ryan guided her gently, showing her how to hold the wrench, how to tighten the bolts. "You learn fast," he said once. She looked at him and answered, "You teach slow." He laughed, and the sound surprised her. It was warm, almost human enough to melt the distance between them. But not everyone saw it that way. Unknown to them, a small drone hovered high above the base, its lens glowing faintly. It belonged to the alien empire, watching, recording. The judges wanted proof of the humans' failure, proof that kindness could not change their enemy. One night, the widow found the drone hidden near the fuel tanks. Her blood ran cold. If she destroyed it, she would be defying her empire again. If she didn't, Ryan's life would be in danger. She walked into his room, holding the small machine. "They are watching us," she said softly. Ryan sat up. "Who?" "My people, the ones who sent me here." For a long time, Ryan said nothing. Then he stood, his voice calm but firm. "Then let them watch. Let them see who we really are." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that kindness was stronger than hatred. But deep inside, fear stirred. Her people did not forgive betrayal twice. That night, as Ryan slept, she stared at the stars through the window. Her reflection looked back at her, half shadow, half light. "Maybe," she whispered to herself, "I am no longer theirs." Outside, the drone blinked once and flew away, carrying a secret message across the void. The Empire would know by morning, and far away, a new order was already being given: erase the human. The morning after the storm, everything seemed quiet again, too quiet. The air smelled of metal and dust. The alien woman, once known only as the widow, stepped outside and felt the sunlight on her face. The desert stretched far in every direction, calm and endless. But inside her, peace was slipping away. She could still hear the small drone's soft hum in her memory, the silent spy of her people. It had watched every word, every moment she spent with the human, and she knew what that meant. The Empire would not stay silent. They would see her loyalty fading. They would see her helping the enemy. And they would come. Ryan, however, looked calm that morning. He stood near the base's generator, tools in hand, his shirt stained with oil. The small cat purred near his boots. He didn't notice how tense she had become. "You're up early," he said, smiling faintly. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "Storm nightmares?" "Something worse," she whispered, but he didn't hear. She wanted to tell him the truth about the drone, the orders, the coming danger, but fear froze her tongue. If she warned him, she would be betraying her people. If she stayed silent, he would die. All day, she worked beside him, pretending everything was normal. He fixed a broken water filter, and she helped lift the heavy parts. The wind blew red, dust across their faces, but for a few hours she forgot the war, the hatred and the punishment. She even laughed when the cat jumped onto Ryan's shoulder and nearly knocked off his wrench. But that laughter died when she saw something in the distance, a flash of silver in the sky. It was small, moving fast, glinting in the sunlight. A ship. Her heart stopped. "Ryan," she said quickly, "we need to go inside." He looked up, confused. "Why? The weather's clear." "Please," she said, her voice shaking now. "It's not the weather." He followed her inside, noticing the panic in her eyes. She closed the door and locked it, breathing hard. "What's going on?" he asked. She turned toward him, holding the small drone she had hidden in her room. Its lens was shattered now. She had broken it earlier that morning. "They were watching us," she said. "My people. The ones who sentenced me to live here. I destroyed their spy, but they will know." Ryan went silent. His hand slowly lowered to his sidearm, not out of fear of her, but readiness. "How long do we have?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Maybe hours." Ryan nodded slowly, calm but serious. "Then we prepare." Together, they worked in silence. He checked the defense turrets, half broken and dusty. She recalibrated the base's signal jammer, her alien hands moving faster than his human tools could keep up. For the first time, they worked not as enemies but as partners in survival. While they worked, Ryan finally spoke. "Why tell me this? You could have kept quiet. You could have let them take me." She stopped for a moment, then said softly, "Because you never treated me like property. You saw me as something more." He looked at her, eyes tired but kind. Everyone deserves to be seen. For a second, she forgot the danger, the war, everything, except the strange warmth in his voice. Then the warning alarm broke the silence. The radar screen flashed red. Several ships were entering orbit. Alien signatures. Ryan's face hardened. "They're early." The widow's heart pounded. "They're coming for me. And for you." He loaded his rifle, but she grabbed his arm. "You can't fight them all." He smiled sadly. "I don't plan to. Just enough to give you a chance." She stepped back, eyes wide. "You would die for me? For your enemy?" He met her gaze. "You stopped being my enemy the moment you saved my life in that storm." The first blast hit the ground near the base, shaking the walls. Sand flew everywhere. The cat ran under the table, hissing. The sound of engines filled the air, alien dropships landing nearby. Ryan turned to her. "If anything happens, there's an escape pod under the hangar. Take it." She shook her head. "No, I'm not leaving you." "Valera," he said, using her real name for the first time. Her eyes widened. "How do you know that name?" He smiled faintly. "It was written in your case file. I thought it was too beautiful to be forgotten." Before she could answer, the ceiling cracked. Another blast. Ryan pulled her to cover. The base lights flickered, alarms blaring. Outside, Alien soldiers surrounded the area, shouting orders in their native tongue. Ryan took a deep breath, handed her a plasma pistol and said, "You're not a prisoner anymore. You're a fighter. And I don't care who's watching. Today we fight together." She looked at the weapon in her hand, her reflection in its metal. A year ago, she would have killed him without hesitation. But now, everything had changed. When the doors burst open, the two of them fought side by side, human and alien enemies no more. Blaster fire filled the room. Smoke rose from shattered consoles. Ryan fired with precision, while she used her speed and agility to strike from the shadows. For a moment it felt like they could win, but then a deep rumble filled the air. A larger ship appeared overhead, casting its shadow over the base. "They brought a warship," Ryan said grimly. The widow's eyes widened. "That's not a retrieval ship. That's an executioner." The base shook again, harder this time. A beam of light tore through the hangar roof, melting the steel. They both fell to the floor. Ryan crawled toward the console, blood running down his arm. "If I can overload the generator, it'll block their sensors. Buy us time." She grabbed his hand, tears forming. "You'll die if you do that." He smiled weakly. "Everyone dies, Valira. But not everyone gets to choose what for." Before she could stop him, he hit the switch. The base lights exploded in a wave of sparks. The air filled with smoke and static. The alien ships above lost their targeting lock. She pulled him close, shaking his shoulders. "Ryan! Ryan, stay with me!" He opened his eyes just enough to whisper, "You're free now." Outside, the sky turned red as the warship withdrew, losing sight of its target. The Empire would return, but not today. And in that small, broken base, an alien widow held a dying human soldier in her arms, whispering the words she never thought she'd say. "You were never my punishment. You were my home." The red sun was setting over the desert when Valira, the alien once called the Widow, carried Ryan's body into the control room. His uniform was torn, his arm burned, but he was still alive. Barely. "Stay with me," she whispered, pressing a cloth against his wound. The smell of smoke and plasma filled the air. The base trembled with every distant explosion. Above, the Empire's warship circled like a dark cloud, searching for heat signatures, waiting to finish what it started. Ryan coughed weakly, eyes half open. "Did it work?" "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "You jammed their scanners. They can't see us now?" He tried to smile. "Good. Buy us time." She felt anger rising inside her, not at him, not at humans, but at her own people. The Empire had called this punishment justice, but what kind of justice destroyed a man who had shown nothing but mercy? Outside, the storm of red dust was growing. Valira looked out through the cracked glass window. Smoke curled into the sky and lightning flashed across the sand. The Empire's landing forces were still out there, searching, scanning, hunting. She had two choices: run and save herself, or fight and save him. Her hand tightened around the plasma pistol Ryan had given her. She whispered to herself, "If this is punishment, then I accept it. But not his death." Valira moved quickly. She dragged spare batteries, wires, and weapon cores into the armory. Her alien training returned to her like fire, the instincts of a warrior buried beneath grief. She remembered her husband's words before his death in the war: "Do not fight for the Empire, fight for the innocent." Now she finally understood. She built small defense drones using Ryan's tools, combining human tech and alien energy cells. When the first one powered up, its red eye glowed softly, waiting for her command. "Protect," she said. Outside, shadows moved. The enemy had found the base again. The first squad landed silently. 4 alien soldiers in black armor. They scanned the area, unaware that their own former commander waited inside. The moment one stepped through the doorway, her trap activated. A drone dropped from the ceiling, blasting light and plasma into the soldiers. The sound of fire echoed through the corridors. Valira moved like lightning, precise, silent, deadly. She fired once, twice, striking armor weak spots she knew by heart. 2 soldiers fell instantly. The others shouted in rage, recognizing her voice. "Valera!" One screamed through his helmet. "You dare raise arms against your own people?" She answered coldly. "You stopped being my people the moment you chose cruelty over honor." They lunged at her, but she ducked behind cover, firing back. The corridor lit with plasma flashes, smoke filling the air. When it was over, only silence remained. She stood there, breathing hard, trembling, not from fear, but from fury. Back inside, Ryan stirred. His voice was weak. "Valera, what happened?" "They found us," she said, kneeling beside him. "I stopped them." He blinked at her, barely awake. "You fought them?" "Yes, and I'll keep fighting." He smiled faintly. "Guess humanity's rubbing off on you." Her throat tightened. "Humanity," she whispered. "I used to think it was weakness, but now I see it's strength." He tried to reach her hand. "Don't let them take you too." "They won't," she said, eyes glowing with determination. "Not while I still breathe." Outside, the ground began to shake again. The warship was preparing a full strike. A beam of light gathered at its underbelly, bright enough to blind the desert sky. Valera ran to the communications console. Half the system was fried, but one channel still flickered to life, a human distress frequency. She spoke quickly into the mic. "This is Captain Ryan Cole's base, code 72 Beta. We are under alien assault. Need evacuation immediately. Static." Then a faint human voice replied. "Signal received. Hold position. Reinforcement en route. 20 minutes, 20 minutes." She looked at the sky. The ship above would destroy everything in less than 10. She turned back to Ryan, who was slipping into unconsciousness. "Help is coming," she said, even though she wasn't sure it was true. Then she ran outside into the storm. The wind tore at her suit. Sand cut across her face. She carried a heavy power cell from the generator, a weapon strong enough to burn the sky. Her steps sank deep into the sand as she climbed the nearest ridge. The warship loomed overhead, its shadow swallowing the horizon. Valera stopped at the top of the ridge and raised the power cell toward the sky. She pressed a sequence of alien codes into its panel, an old forbidden command known only to officers. "Override. Nova ignition." A hum filled the air. The ground glowed beneath her feet. The cell began to burn, blue light spilling from its core. She knew what would happen. The blast would destroy everything within a mile, including her. But she didn't care. "If I must die," she whispered, "then let it be for him." The warship above locked onto her signal and fired. A beam of energy descended like a spear of fire. The moment it hit, the power cell exploded. A blinding wave of blue and gold light that turned the desert into day. The warship's hull cracked. Its systems failed. The massive ship groaned as its engines went silent, falling like a dying star onto the dunes far away. The explosion rolled across the desert, shaking the base to its core. Inside, Ryan awoke, coughing. The lights flickered. "They kept me out from under the table." "Valera," he shouted weakly. No answer. He tried to stand but collapsed again. Through the broken window, he saw the sky glowing blue, the mark of her final act. Minutes later, the sound of human gunships filled the air. Rescue teams landed, soldiers rushing in. Ryan was carried out, barely conscious, still calling her name. When the dust settled, they found her, alive. Barely, half buried in sand, armor cracked, her hand still holding the melted power cell. Ryan was there when she opened her eyes. His voice was soft. "You didn't run." She smiled weakly. "Neither did you." He squeezed her hand gently. "You just saved both our worlds." She looked at the rising sun over the red desert and whispered, "Then maybe." There is still hope for both. The human ship lifted off, carrying them away from the burning wreckage below. A fallen empire's ship lying silent, and the first spark of peace between two enemies now reborn in fire. The sky over Arden 7 was quiet again. The smoke from the fallen warship drifted slowly into the red horizon, fading like the last breath of a dying empire. Valera sat beside Ryan's medical pod inside the human rescue ship. Her body was covered in bandages, her armor cracked and scarred. Every breath hurt, but she didn't care. Her eyes never left him. He lay unconscious, pale and weak, yet alive. The doctor said he would recover. Slowly. She should have felt relief. But deep inside, a storm still raged. For hours she sat in silence, her hands trembling. Every second replayed in her mind. The fire, the blast, the screams of her people. The empire she had once sworn to protect had tried to kill her, and she had fought back. She had become what they feared most, a traitor who had learned mercy. Days later, the human fleet landed near the remains of the alien warship. Commanders and diplomats arrived, surrounded by soldiers and medics. Among them was General Hayes, an older man with gray hair and a sharp voice. He entered the tent where Valira was being treated. His expression was cautious but respectful. "You're the alien commander who helped save Captain Cole?" She nodded weakly. "Yes. Why?" Hayes asked simply. "You could have run. You could have joined your own fleet." She looked at Ryan through the glass window of the med bay. "Because he didn't deserve to die for our hate." The general studied her for a long time, then said, "You may have just ended a war, Valira, but your people won't forgive this." He was right. Only a few days later, the Empire's ships appeared again, not to attack, but to negotiate. A ceasefire had been called across the stars. The High Council of her species demanded Valira's return. They called it honor retrieval. The humans called it surrender. Inside the main tent, under the dull light of the twin suns, both sides faced each other, human officers on one side, alien envoys on the other, tall, armored, cold. In the middle stood Valira, her blue skin pale, her body still weak but her eyes burning bright. The alien envoy spoke first, voice cold as steel. "Valira of the Alaris Dominion, you are hereby ordered to return to face judgment for treason and aiding the human enemy." She didn't flinch. "My only crime was mercy. Mercy is weakness," the envoy hissed. "You shamed our kind before the galaxy." She stepped closer. "No. I showed the galaxy what we could become if we stopped pretending strength was cruelty." Gasps filled the tent. Even the human soldiers leaned forward, sensing the weight of her words. The envoy's eyes narrowed. "You think they care for you?" He gestured toward the humans. "You are their trophy, their experiment." Valira looked at Ryan, now standing behind the glass, alive, still weak, but watching her. "No," she said firmly. "He cared for me when he had nothing to gain. When my people wanted my death, he gave me a home." The envoy's voice grew louder. "Then you reject your bloodline? You reject your empire?" Her hand trembled for a moment, then steadied. "I reject the lies that made us monsters." The tent went silent. Even the hum of machines stopped, as if the air itself was listening. General Hayes stepped forward. "She's under human protection now. You can't take her." The envoy's eyes glowed. "If you keep her, there will be war again." Hayes didn't blink. "If war returns, it will not be because of her. It will be because your empire fears peace." The alien envoy looked furious. "Then she will die with you." He turned sharply and left the tent, his guards following. Valira's heart pounded. She had just declared herself an enemy of her own species. There was no going back now. She turned to Hayes. "You should have let me go. I've put your people in danger." He crossed his arms. "You gave us hope. We'll handle the danger." That night the base was quiet. Ryan, finally awake, walked slowly to her tent. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages, but he smiled when he saw her sitting outside, staring at the stars. "You look better," he said softly. "So do you," she replied, her voice calm but distant. He sat beside her. For a long moment they said nothing. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, filled with stars from both their worlds. Finally Ryan spoke. "They want you to go back, don't they?" "Yes," she said. "They'll never stop hunting me if I stay." "Then don't stay," he said, though the words tasted bitter. "You've done enough for us." She turned to him, eyes full of sadness. "You think I can just return after what I've done? They'll execute me the moment I step aboard their ship." Ryan sighed. "Then what will you do?" She looked up at the stars again. "Maybe I'll make my own home, somewhere between their world and yours." He smiled faintly. "Sounds lonely." She smiled back. "It's better than living in chains." Before dawn, a message came through, from the Empire itself. It was short and cruel. "Return to face judgment, or we will erase the outpost that harbors you." Ryan slammed his fist against the console. They're bluffing. Valera shook her head. They never bluff. She looked around the base. The humans she'd fought beside, the cat that followed Ryan, the silent desert beyond. Then she looked at him. This is my fight, she said. If I go, maybe they'll spare you. You think I'll let you walk into your own death? He snapped. She smiled softly. You didn't let me die last time. Let me return the favor. Ryan stepped closer, his voice trembling. If you go, they'll kill you. And if you stay, they'll kill us both. Then maybe, she whispered, we stop letting them decide who lives and who dies. The next morning, the alien warship appeared again, hovering silently over the desert, but this time it didn't fire. Its weapon stayed cold. Instead, a voice echoed across the comms. Commander Valera, speak. Why have you chosen the enemy? Valera stepped outside, looking straight up into the sky. Her voice was strong, carried by every loudspeaker in the camp. Because the enemy showed me something the Empire never did, she said. They showed me kindness. A long silence followed. Then the warship began to turn, not to attack but to retreat. Slowly it vanished into the clouds. The soldiers cheered, but Ryan just stood beside her, staring at the sky. She looked at him and said quietly, They'll be back one day. He nodded. Then they'll find us ready. As the sun rose over Arden 7, its light touched the desert like gold. And for the first time in years, Valera didn't feel like a prisoner or a soldier or a punishment. She felt like a person, finally free to choose her own fate. Weeks had passed since the alien warship had turned away from Arden 7. The red desert was quiet now, dotted with human tents and machines rebuilding the shattered base. Smoke no longer rose from the ground. In its place came the sound of laughter, of life returning. Valera walked through the camp every morning, her steps light despite the pain in her leg. Soldiers greeted her with cautious respect. Some still looked at her with suspicion. She was, after all, once their enemy. But most nodded with quiet gratitude. Everyone knew what she had done. She had saved them all. Ryan had recovered faster than anyone expected. His wounds had healed into scars, reminders of both the fire and her courage. When he saw her that morning standing on the ridge above the dunes, he walked up beside her. You're awake early, he said softly. I still can't sleep through silence, she replied. I keep expecting the sky to burn again. He smiled. Then it's time to show you somewhere with better skies. A few days later, they boarded a human transport ship headed for Earth. For Valera, it was her first time leaving the desert, her first time seeing the blue curve of the human homeworld from space. She stood at the viewing window, her reflection glowing against the stars. It's so alive, she whispered. Ryan smiled. It's messy, noisy, crowded, and home. When they landed, crowds waited to see her. News had spread across the colonies and core worlds. The alien widow who chose humanity over war. Cameras flashed and voices filled the air. But Valera didn't look at them. She only looked at the sky, the clouds drifting across the sun. She had never seen clouds before. Ryan guided her through the crowd. You okay? She nodded slowly. It's strange. Your world feels warm. My people would call it unclean, uncontrolled. And what do you call it? He asked. She smiled faintly. Alive. They stayed in a quiet human settlement far from the cities, a small coastal town built near the water. Ryan rented a modest home overlooking the sea. To Valera, everything was new. The smell of salt, the sound of waves, the laughter of children running by. The first night she couldn't sleep. She walked outside and stood by the water, letting the waves touch her feet. The cold stung her skin, but she didn't move. For the first time in years, she wasn't running or fighting. Ryan joined her, holding 2 cups of hot tea. It's not coffee, he said, smiling. Thought you might like something softer. She took the cup, sipping slowly. The warmth spread through her hands. Your people drink to forget, she said quietly. But I drink to remember. Remember what? That peace isn't a dream. He didn't answer. They stood together in silence, the stars reflected in the dark sea. In the months that followed, Valera began to help with human projects, research, rebuilding, peace talks. Her knowledge of alien technology helped prevent more bloodshed. Across the galaxy, her name became a symbol, the bridge between worlds. But fame meant little to her. Each evening she returned to that same beach where Ryan and the cat waited on the porch. Sometimes he teased her. "You know, the cat still likes you more than me." She'd smile. "He's wiser than both of us." Other times they would just sit in silence listening to the waves. Words weren't needed anymore. One evening she found an old photo on Ryan's desk, his soldiers smiling before the war. She traced her finger across it gently. "Do you miss them?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes distant. "Every day, but maybe now I can finally let them rest," she nodded. "Then your world and mine aren't so different after all." Months later, the Human Council invited her to speak, a historic broadcast shared across both species networks. She stood on a bright platform, the flags of both civilizations behind her. When the cameras turned on, she looked straight ahead and said in calm, clear words, "I was sent to live with a human as punishment. I thought I would find cruelty. I found compassion. I thought I would learn obedience. I learned freedom." Her voice trembled slightly. "We are not so different. We both fear what we don't understand. But if a human soldier and an alien widow can find peace in a desert of war, then maybe the rest of us can too." The speech spread through the galaxy. On human and alien worlds alike, people watched her words and began to question the old hatred that had ruled them for generations. That night, after the broadcast, she and Ryan sat again by the water. The stars above reflected like silver sparks on the waves. "You changed everything," he said quietly. "No," she said. "We changed everything." He looked at her, his eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "So, what happens now?" She turned toward the horizon. "Now we build. Not for one world, but for both." A gentle breeze blew through her hair. For the first time, she felt truly free. Years later, children would tell the story of the alien widow who became a human's greatest treasure. Paintings, songs, and holograms were made in her honor. But in truth, she and Ryan never sought glory. They lived quietly, growing old by the sea, surrounded by the peace they had fought to create. One evening, as the sun set in golden light, Valira stood outside, her blue skin glowing in the dusk. Ryan came beside her, older now, his face lined with time but smiling the same calm smile. He looked at her and said softly, "You remember what you told me back on Arden 7? She tilted her head. "Which part?" "That humans were monsters." She laughed gently. "I was wrong," he nodded. "And I said monsters don't feed their prisoners." She smiled. "No, they make them coffee." They both laughed, and the cat curled beside their feet, purring softly. Valira looked at the sunset, red and gold mixing like two worlds becoming one, and whispered, "They sent me to a human as punishment, but he became my home."